What's up, y'all? It's your girl Amanda, and we are back with another episode of Mandy's Entertainment Reviews. So, for this episode, we are reviewing the Billy Joel documentary. It's called Billy Joel, and so it goes. It did come out in July of 2025 on HBO Max. So, I literally just got around to watching it. I don't know where my mind was, but I did watch two parts. It was two parts. Both parts were about 2 hours long, so it took me a couple days to finish it. And I do give this documentary a 4.5 out of 5 stars. So why do I give this documentary a 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5? Because when I was growing up, I didn't know who Billy Joel was until I was like a teenager. So I'm seventh grade. I was in Catholic school. My my history teacher, shout out to Mr. Grunchick. I don't know if he's still alive or not. He was an old man when I was there, so I don't know if he still teaches, if he's retired. I don't know. But he played "We Didn't Start the Fire." I was 13 years old, very intrigued by the song. And then that was like the only song I knew for years until I actually found the album that "We Didn't Start the Fire" kit was on. And I fell in love with this other song called "I Go to Extremes." So even though like I knew those two songs probably, I saw that, oh, Billy Joel has a new documentary coming out, whatever. I'm gonna watch it, but I'm not gonna really learn anything from it. But I was wrong. The documentary was very engaging, kept my attention, and I did learn a lot of stuff about Billy Joel. And the music was pretty cool as well. So as you know, how I do my documentary reviews is I do KWL, know, want to know, and learn. And if you didn't know that, well, that's just on you at this point. So I'll start with what I know. What I know is that, Billy Joel is a big time music star for the generation older than me, because my generation don't know who Billy Joel really is unless you like really do your research. He was married to Christy Brinkley, and they had a daughter, Alexa Joel. Um, they were married a short time, probably like 10 years, which is a short time. And Christy Brinkley is gorgeous, and I know that they're still cool to this day. I did see Alexa Joel in some movies. I think that was her, Alexa Joel. Um, he owned a huge house in New York, out in Long Island somewhere, but he sold it to Jerry Seinfeld, and that's Jerry Seinfeld's house now. He has songs like Piano Man, We Didn't Start the Fire, and I Go to Extremes. He had a motorcycle shop that recently made news that it is closing. And then also there was some recent health issues that I did read about some time ago. So what do I want to know? Again, I was fairly new to Billy Joel. I don't know his background and all that stuff. So I wanted to know about his upbringing, his musical beginnings. Why did he write "We Didn't Start the Fire"? What has he been up to since the 90s? And how does Billy Joel want to be remembered? So those simple 5 things I wanted to know. But I learned so much. I did break down what I learned into 2 parts. So we're going to start with part 1. I learned that he had a boat named after his daughter Alexa in Sag Harbor, which was so sweet. He did reveal he is camera shy, which is crazy to me because he's Billy Joel and he's such a big movie star, and there were like interviews of him and stuff. So I get it, because when you a big time celebrity, it's like, you don't really like a lot of attention, or sometimes the attention can be such pressure. He started playing in bands as a kid to pay the bills, because he was passionate about music at a young age, but also he didn't come from the best financial situation, as I learned in the documentary. As I said, he grew up poor, so he is from Hicksville, Long Island. I didn't know Long Island has so many little towns in it. Like, I'm not from New York, so I'm learning so much. Like, he's from Hicksville, and Mariah Carey's from a little town called Huntington. I think that's a small town too. He joined the group The Hassles to get a $2,000 organ. So basically, he turned his back on like the band he was with for over an organ, which I thought was messed up. But at the same time, had he not done that, where would he be today? You know. His mother was super supportive. It's always great to have a super supportive parent. His first song, Every Step I Take, was the first song he wrote, and it gained popularity in Long Island, which always feels good. He left the hassles to advance his music career. He created Attila, which was a duo of him and John Small. And when Attila did their first album, they had meat carcasses around them, which I thought was nasty. Like, I could imagine when they did the photo shoot for that video, or sorry, that album cover, it probably stunk in there so bad. It stunk in there probably because meat carcasses do not smell good at all. Like, meat smells good when you cook it, but it don't smell good when you're around it raw. So, yeah. He was in love with John Small's wife. Oh, God. I keep thinking about Alexa Joe. So he was in love with John Small's wife, and he actually admitted it to John Small's, which pissed him off, which I would understand, because if you're in love with my partner, that's my partner. Like, you can't have it. You can't. And then Attila broke up. He ended up becoming homeless and sleeping in laundromats. He attempted suicide with sleeping pills that his sister gave him. And also, when that wasn't successful, he started drinking cleaning fluid. And so he was going through it mentally. So after he tried to kill himself, he checked into a mental health facility. And during that time, which was like the 60s or 70s, that mental health was kind of like a taboo subject to talk about. Like, nobody really talked about mental health like we do now in 2025, because there are so many more resources. Like, back in the 70s, we didn't have, like, you know, better help and all that stuff. So if you had mental illness or something like that, you kept it on the low, you mask, or you move into like a mental health facility permanently. That's how they handled it back in the day. He told a story about how he recorded material that was 2 times too fast, and he basically had to scratch it and get rid of it and start all over, which is a lot because they had like real recording and all that stuff. It wasn't simple like how you go in a studio now and you can like just get rid of, or, you know, start over just by clicking and deleting. No, back in the day, they had like reel, and you had to like cut and edit and all that stuff. It was a lot of work. Because I remember, shout out to the person who did put that comment in my Stax Records review. He basically explained to me about reels and how it was, how things were edited and stuff. So yeah, the technology was not what it was back in the day. So after he admitted to John that he was in love with Elizabeth, they started dating him, Elizabeth and Billy. And then while they were touring, they were getting screwed. So this surprised me because I hear all the stories about how, you know, recording artists get screwed earlier in their careers. I always thought, you know, since it was like Billy Joel and all them people during that time of the music history, I thought they didn't get screwed. But I guess like Billy Joel and them, they got screwed too. So that was crazy to find out. Also, while Billy Joel was touring, Elizabeth brought her son, which is Billy Joel's stepson, which I always just say, the road is not a place for a child unless they really have to be there. But I guess they didn't really have like a village or whatever to watch him. So they brought him on the road too. And there was a point where Billy Joel was so broke, he had to take a job as a piano player at a LA club. Do what you got to do to pay the bills. So he had to play the piano at, I think it was called the Independence Club or something. So he moved to California. He lived in Malibu on top of the canyon. I always wanted to live on top of the canyon because when I was younger, I thought I would sell so many books I would own a house in Malibu. And this was before I learned about like property taxes and bouginess and gentrification and all that stuff. So never mind. But it's always a dream to live in Malibu on top of the canyon, and you're overlooking the water. You're not exactly on the water, but you're overlooking it. Oh, that was my dream, and he lived it for a minute. He ended up marrying Elizabeth because they moved to Malibu. They lived in a house together. He married Elizabeth in 1973. They didn't have like a courthouse. They didn't have like a traditional ceremony. They had a courthouse ceremony. And Billy was like talking about how he was hesitant on marrying her because I guess his influence of marriage was not the best on him. And had he not married Elizabeth, she would have had to go back home because her mother was like making her come back home, which I didn't understand. If she was over 18, she was grown and she didn't have to come back home. But to each its own, I guess. So he signed with Columbia Records in the early 70s as well. And what I also liked was that we saw Clive Davis, who has signed a lot of big acts. Billy Joel, Whitney Houston, just a lot of people. Because I read his book too. I don't remember. I have to go back and reread it. But he did mention how he signed Whitney Houston. He probably did mention how he signed Billy Joel. The book was super long, and I never really properly finished it. But I need to go back and read how he had got a chance to experience of signing Billy Joel. Piano Man got on the charts in 1973. Artie Rip made money from that record. So it's kind of like the Ruthless Records Suge Knight Death Row situation where somebody makes money off somebody and they're signed to another label. So I kind of saw that connection too. Let's see. Bruce Springsteen thinks Billy Joel is better than him. And the reason why I put this is because I do like seeing, artists give other artists flowers. Because sometimes there's artists out there that are just like too good to like, or just not, or, basically, y'all know what I'm trying to say. Like, for example, I'm a rapper and I'm talking to another rapper. And me, the rapper who's so stuck up, is probably like, whatever. Like, you think you're better than me? Whatever. But I like to see, like, other artists give other artists, like, their flowers and stuff. So I really did enjoy seeing Bruce Springsteen talk about Billy Joel in a positive light, of course. So he left Malibu/LA and moved back to New York in 1975. And that's when his song, New York State of Mind, came about. And also what I liked is that they showed, like, a montage of different artists. Alicia Keys, Alexa Jo Ray, Miley Cyrus, all of them singing like a part of that song in their concerts or with him as well. He's a huge Frank Sinatra fan. If you're a Frank Sinatra fan, you're all right with me. That's all I gotta say. So it basically reverted back to his childhood, how he was born in the Bronx. He moved to Long Island at 1 year old. Another thing I didn't really know was that he's Jewish. His father was a piano player, and he told a story about how his father like slapped him upside the head when he was trying to teach him piano. His parents were toxic and divorced in the 1950s. Again, the 50s and the 60s was during a time where like a lot of things were taboo, along with mental illness, divorce was kind of taboo too, in a way. And it was, I think, also because it was religious reasons, because in the Bible, somewhere in the Bible, it says divorce is a sin. I don't know where. I grew up, there were Bibles in my house. We didn't really read them. So, yeah. He went on to say how his mom was an alcoholic due to life stress because she was raising 2 kids by herself. And it was always thought that she was bipolar. Again, mental illness is a taboo conversation, so they probably never even had her tested. So yeah. He would tell stories about how his grandfather would take him to the Brooklyn School of Music. I think any kid who is into like the arts and stuff should experience like something like the Brooklyn School of Music, art museums and all that stuff, because it kind of stimulates your brain to like go create. So I'm glad his grandfather did that. Something else I didn't know, this Billy Joel didn't graduate high school. I thought that was crazy. Like a lot of our favorite singers and pop stars didn't graduate high school. I don't know if he ever went back and got his GED, but he for sure did not graduate high school. He hired Elizabeth to be his manager, and she started her own management company. And as this was during the time like Billy Joel was really getting like he was making music. He had music banned by Catholic schools because his Catholic schoolgirls reference, which to me is so pointless because I went to Catholic school and they were somewhat like when it came to dances and stuff, they were lenient. Like they played hip hop, but this was during like the 2008, 2007, 2009 when like hip hop was poppy and they didn't mind that. So, we're getting more into the 80s or beginning of the 80s. So Billy Joel started struggling with substance abuse, which contributed to their marriage issue, which I wasn't surprised when I heard about Billy Joel having substance abuse because his mother had substance abuse. So it was, he was around it. And when you're around it, it's not a surprise that you, like, in my opinion, because I've seen it happen in my own family, it's not a surprise that like the next generation would get it. So it wasn't surprising. And then when Billy Joel became an substance abuser, his stepson became a substance abuser because he was around it. So then this was towards the end of the marriage. Elizabeth decided to step back from music, and she hired her brother to work for Billy as his manager, which is important because what we find out in part 2. So then he became obsessed with motorcycles then he got in a motorcycle accident. And when he was in the hospital trying to recuperate from the accident, Elizabeth told him basically she moved out and moved to the city. And she filed for divorce in 1982. So that's the end of part 1. Now, I didn't like this part. I mean, even though we learned a lot, it was kind of slow to me. Now, part 2 is my favorite because I learned so much. So we're going to start with, in part 2, because it was like 2 hours and 25 minutes long. Part 2. So they open up and they talk about the presidency under Reagan and how, it was a recession and people were losing their jobs and blah, 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 right? And I was looking at, like, as they flashed the headlines, the newspaper headlines, and I'm like, man, we're going through the same thing today. Like, people are losing their jobs. It's hard. Unemployment is high. The only difference is that when you're unemployed during the Reagan administration, you had to go to an office and stand in line to get benefits. But now it's all online. You just fill out an application and, you wait to hear something via mail or email or whatever. Because I know I had to do it twice. Like, it's crazy. And it would have been crazier if I was living back in the 80s. He wrote a song inspired by his friends who went to Vietnam. It's called Goodnight Saigon, which I thought was very nice for a tribute to his friends. His friends got a voice to express what was going on while they were fighting in war. He wore the Star of David to represent his culture in the height of the Trump's craziness in the first term. Y'all remember all that rioting and stuff, and the good old boys, and then there was the one with the tiki torches. Y'all remember, because I remember. So I'm very glad that he got to represent where he come from and who he is. Then it went into the history of his father. His father grew up in Germany. He's met his grandparents a few times. His grandfather had a textile business and was wealthy in Germany, but he had to sell the business because basically Hitler came in and ruined everything. And then his grandfather was targeted by anti-Semitic publication. They wrote bad things about him. It was just sad and crazy, but his grandparents ultimately escaped. I think that's when they moved to the Swiss border. They moved over the Swiss border. And Billy Joel didn't know all this until he was about 20, which is insane. But at the same time, an appropriate age, like I think 16 to 20 at a young age, so you should learn like the hardships of your family history because you can't explain it when you're 10 years old. And also, sometimes when you're older, you're a little bit stubborn and kind of don't want to accept it. But I think 20s was a good age for him to learn his family history. His father had moved to Vienna after he left Billy Joel's mother. He ended up having another son who was born in like 71, and he's a like a, what's the guy? A orchestra leader. I forgot what the word is, but y'all know what I'm trying to say. So he's one of those. So he's learned about his relatives later in life. He wrote a song for his father. It's called Vienna. And they showed that he played the piano with him in concert, which I thought was very nice. So then we're getting into the mid-'80s, and he meets Christy Brinkley in St. Bart's. I thought they would meet somewhere in like New York City or LA or something, but they met in St. Bart's in the islands, and he charmed her. And another story he told, because people seem to forget Whitney Houston was a model first, before she was the singer. Professionally, that is. He was telling a story about how him, Christy Brinkley, and Elle Macpherson, who's another like very popular supermodel, they were singing somewhere, and he said a young lady tried to come up and say, I can sing better, and he basically dismissed her. That young lady was Whitney Houston. And Billy Joel, you should have let Whitney Houston sing, because she said she could sing, and we all know, we all seen it. So yeah. Christy Brinkley, him and Christy Brinkley became like in a serious relationship to a point where she was in the Uptown Girl video, and they ended up marrying in this like beautiful ceremony on a boat in New York City. They also, Christy Brinkley also talked about her relationship with Billy Joel's mom. She spoke very highly of Roz Joel, who she revealed was a singer, and there was footage of her singing with Billy Joel, and singing and hanging with the family. Alexa Joel, just like Billy Joel's stepson from his first marriage, was on the road a lot with her parents. Another thing I learned is that his idol was Ray Charles, and they collaborated together on a song called Baby Grand. So remember when I said, when I was talking about how his ex-brother-in-law, or if he's still considered his brother-in-law, Frank Weber was hired to be his manager after Elizabeth Small stepped down, right? All right, so Frank Weber was his manager for years at this point. And Billy Joel and Christy Brinkley, they told the story of how they would travel to different places, and people would tell them, congratulations, you bought this piece of property, you bought this piece of property, you bought this piece of property. And they were like, no, what are you talking about? No, he didn't. Turns out Frank Weber was buying property and other things unauthorized. So he was getting stolen from. And, he didn't want to believe it, but ultimately he had to do what he had to do, and he sued Frank Weber for $90 million. So that went down, but he ended up deciding to just go out and start over financially. And this is when We Didn't Start the Fire and that whole album came out. And the inspiration for We Didn't Start the Fire was just basically him looking at headlines inspired by looking at headlines year by year and all the craziness that has happened in the world. And school children listen to the song to learn history. And again, that's how I learned a lot of history, is because my 7th grade teacher played that song. And it's still a play in my house now. 7th grade, I was 13? I'm 30 now. It's 17 years. Like, I still listen to that song because I like the beat to it too. So after that, his work and his drinking killed his marriage to Christy. And it made me sad that Christy, she was like crying and stuff in the documentary. So they separated on Thanksgiving, which would really suck because you can't spend Thanksgiving with your loved one or your partner or your husband because y'all separated. Very sad. He toured with Elton John for 16 years. People said that it wouldn't happen because there was like a rivalry, but I saw some of the clips they showed was friendship. His brother is a conductor. See, I was struggling over my words And I was like, I don't know what he does, but he leads the orchestra. He's the conductor. I think that's the conductor. I think that's the word. If y'all know the word, if I'm saying it right, please tell me. But he's one of those. And then there was like footage of them talking together and just hanging out. Like I think in 2020 something. It was very recent that they were talking and hanging out. And I like to see that because a lot of people have siblings that they don't hang out with, and they were born from like a different mom or a different dad, and they don't talk about them, they don't see them. And I never understood that. Like me, I got 2 older brothers from my dad's first wife, and I hang out with them as much as I can. I don't treat them like strangers, you know. When I was a kid, like, sorry to get off track, but when I was a kid, I couldn't, maybe I was just too shy, or I just didn't want to. Like I didn't really put forth the effort to get to know them. But when I was a teenager and then now in my adult years, I hang out with them. I talk to them on the phone as much as I can. So, and I like doing it. They're great people, my brothers, but you know, but I just love seeing that, and I don't like seeing somebody not even acknowledge that's their sibling. So, but I like seeing them together and talking. Billy Joel didn't really get to know his father before he died, which really sucked. And what I mean by that, like, they probably never sat. His father probably never told him stories, or, you know, just told him things about him. So he married the 3rd time after Christy Brinkley. He married a woman named Katie Lee, and she was in the documentary too. So he must be like friends with his ex-wives or something, because they're in the documentary. They spoke really highly of him. Like if they were bitter after the divorce, they probably wouldn't have not done the documentary, but they spoke really highly of him, nothing negative. So I guess he's friends with them. When he was married to her, that's when he had more car accidents. He had one in Long Island, and then in 2002 he like crashed into a house, which was crazy. And of course, when you do crazy stuff as a celebrity, you get parodied on Saturday Night Live, and he didn't really like that. So he ended up going to Betty Ford rehab for his drinking. And what also we learned was that his 3rd wife was so career driven and young, and she wanted to do things, and I guess he was older and didn't want to. This is what I mean when I talk about age gap relationships. So y'all know I'm in one. But I started dating older men after 25, because I always say, like, if you date an older man before 25, it's not going to work, because you're young. You're 21, 22, 23, 24. There's so much you want to do in life. Now, luckily for me, I did everything I wanted to do, and that's how my relationship works. So, and there's no arguments, none of that. No, I want to do something crazy, because I've already did everything crazy in my early 20s. I'm chilling now. So I guess he married Katie Lee when she was like really young, and she was wanting to do stuff. Should have waited till after you're 25, in my opinion. And after they got divorced, he started having erratic behavior, canceling shows and stuff, and it kind of irritated Elton John. So then, in 2011, he announced his desire to retire in an email. Now, this was before the popularity of social media. Now, social media back in those days, we had Twitter. It's kind of infancy. We had Facebook, but nobody really cared about Facebook. And MySpace, but MySpace was getting ready to die off. So we had Twitter and Facebook, but I guess at that time he wasn't very tech savvy. So he wrote his wish to be retired in an email, and it was screenshot and sent somewhere. While he was in hiding, quote unquote, he got married for the 4th time. Her name is Alexis, and they ended up having 2 daughters, and he became a stay-at-home husband. Billy Joel, a stay-at-home husband. Insane. But because of Hurricane Sandy, he kind of came out of retirement to sing, and I guess he's been doing shows ever since. And all 3 of his daughters, they do go on stage with him and sing. So that was a very nice thing to see as well. Let's go back to my notes here. All right, so I do give this again a 4.5 out of 5 stars. What I liked is that it was produced by Tom Hanks. Everybody likes the Tom Hanks movie. I learned that Billy Joel is a goofball in real life. Like, he was not stiff. Like, I always saw pictures of Billy Joel. I always thought, oh God, this guy looks stiff. But he's really a goofball. He's not a Trump supporter, so that's quite all right with me. He did, his band members, the Billy Joel band, it was really nice seeing them at the kitchen table 50 years later. A lot of famous cameo appearances. There was Pink, Nas, Bruce Springsteen, John Mellencamp, just to name a few, Paul McCartney. What I disliked is that, like, the order that they went, it kind of confused me. On the first part, they started with from the beginning of his singing to like how he got his international status, and then they started with his childhood. But most documentaries I watch, it starts with childhood, then the beginning of your career, then your stardom, then what's going on now. And also, I didn't like how him and his first wife split. It was a kind of a sad story to me. But yeah, that is another episode of Mandy's Entertainment Reviews for the Billy Joel documentary. Thank y'all so much for listening, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.